All right, exercise select today. We're going to talk about some mechanics of the SkiErg and give you some insight as to how you can put it into practice in different kinds of scenarios for work or for specific skill. It's quite accepted as, because it looks like a cardiovascular piece, that people can regard it as a cardiovascular piece of equipment. It is what we would consider a cyclical piece of activity. But don't forget that there still is muscle contractions per rep on the SkiErg. So let's go back to dose response and think about that for a second, because then it'll formulate, an idea and who should be using it, and then we'll kind of discuss kind of things you should be thinking about as you do it. So it's primarily a very concentric activity, which means that, the action that we propose to do it in is really a full body. I like to think of it as a full body flexion activity. Now, as you may have recognized, if you have not tried it before, when you place this into a category that are similar to other things, like a kipping pull-up, toes to ring, toes to bar, seated V-ups, GHD sit-ups, etc., you probably have recognized that a lot of flexion activities, like we had mentioned in ball slams before too, a lot of flexion activities are done for very powerful activities, okay? So the problem with the SkiErg in relation to its non-carryover into skiing is that when you actually are on ice or snow, for those of you who don't know that, it's the white stuff up north skiing, yes? So for those who are on skiing, cross-country skiing, whether you're doing classic or skating, you actually get to use your lower body to help in the action of power production. So some things we forget about is that when we do the SkiErg, we actually can't use our lower body to release energy as we flex. So think of this, as I go through a skiing action, it doesn't look like this, but as I go through skiing action and it's outdoors, I get to pull, right, which I'm actually pushing on the ground with my poles, but at the same time, I'm releasing energy, right, almost like a snatch if you think about it. It goes from a flexion to an extension position. I get to go from this flexion to an extension position, but my lower body gets to push as well. Even if it's classic skiing, I still need to be able to dig in and push away. Now, the shitty thing around being the SkiErg in place is that as I'm trying to release that stored energy of flexion, I have nowhere to dissipate that energy. So my feet are closed, right? So my feet are in a closed chain activity. So really, it's like a quasi, GHD sit-up and a shit ton of them for reps. The great thing about it is that it's a gravity-based hip flexion activity. The difference between gravity-based and eccentric-based hip activities, when you do a GHD sit-up, I go into an eccentric component, right, where it's under a lot of tension, and then I go back to a concentric activity. When I go into full extension with this guy, right, when I'm up at this full extension, there's no major tension. Do you see that? When I'm up high right here, it's not a lot of work. Whereas when I'm fully extended on GHD sit-up, there's a lot of tension there. So when I want to go into a contraction element of the SkiErg, it really just is one activity. It's all concentric, no eccentric. It's just an active eccentric, and then all powerful concentric. Back to my point is that it's not a really great carryover, so I don't think you're going to become world champion at a loppet if you just get really good on a SkiErg. All you're really going to do is to develop, more slower twitch fibers in your upper body, and you're going to turn all that flexion activity into a little bit more of a muscle endurance activity. But you need to know that for dose response. Now, some of the positive you may have extracted from that is that when you do the activity repetitively, don't think about form here, just the activity. So just look at the activity. When I do that activity repetitively, I'm doing every rep that I do, I'm doing a concentric, powerful activity, right? So the positive thing around that, unlike, wall balls, burpees, box jump rebounds, double unders, etc., there's not a lot of eccentric component to it. Therefore, a whole ton of people can do this, right? So if all you practice is great technique of that full flexion activity, then you can get someone to start off really slow and easy on this and effectively progress up quite effectively. I'll get to it later down the road, but the shitty part around that as well is that because it's a powerful flexion activity, if you go too hard, you're going to burn out very quickly. For those of you who've practiced this, you probably recognize that that if you do really hard sets, you just get burnt quickly. But for technique, there's a couple of points I want you to think about for it. And if you're especially going to be practicing this for individuals who may not be looking to become world champions at SkiErg, you're just involving the SkiErg as a cyclical component in their work, I just want you to make sure that all the angles are closing and being used together. So the main thing you can pick up as a coach, so I'm not spending 20 minutes on just technique of it as an example, is you just want a joined concentric activity altogether. So you don't want this disjointed, you don't want disjointed movement. So disjointed movement would be hip flexion prior to the arms being pulled down, right? So this would be disjointed. I'll try to do it as best as I can. I hope that looks funny because it feels funny. So that's a disjointed action, and even just use a keen eye to be like, yeah, you're getting a lot of hip flexion first. So that may be with people who don't have, possibly correct overhead position on either side. You may want to do a scratch test or an FLR or side bridge to see if they have good core control to periphery. You may have people who just traditionally use all their power by extending in their mid back and low back, and then you can have the other group. So you have the other group who's going to be all arms, and then they're secondary to pulling down. So this would be an all-arm individual, right? So I'm actually not even doing the hip flexion activity effectively afterwards. So that felt funny, so it was probably correct also. So that means someone who is only doing lots of pulling. So again, that's disjointed in that they're not doing a pull, body flexion, hip flexion activity and gravity drop all at the same time. So one way that you can get that across to clients is giving them external cues, and those cues can be based upon sound, right? And so you can pull them away from the SkiErg and just say you want all these things collapsing at one time. So you want it to be a fluid movement, almost like a ball throw. So if they think about a ball throw and releasing something, they may carry that over to a SkiErg when they want to do a bunch of reps of it, okay? So what I mean by joined activity is that as the person is going to be getting into full extension, all of these things are going to work together at the same time. From triple extension position, if they can do this, hopefully you're not too tall where you're limited based upon that. You're going to drop into the ground and at the same time flex knees, hips, and you're pulling at the same time. So this entire action should try to work together. Let's see if I can combine them all. And I am a Canadian with cross-country skiing background, so I may have an up on most people, but hopefully I was able to coordinate some of the finer points of it. Indirect assessment of this too. You want to ask people afterwards if they get more fatigue in one side of the lat relative to the other. You want to ask them if they get some low back pain or fatigue afterwards, because some people may not actually be able to do the core tension that's required with that flexion activity for lots of reps. So just think about this. If someone doesn't do an FLR really good and they can't do Tabata sit-ups, and I'm trying to describe someone, and they have a hard time doing a knees to elbow, but you decide to give them 10 minutes on the SkiErg. Well, if you think about that, let's just say I do, 30 strokes a minute, that's 300 times that person needs to go through that flexion activity. Yet they were probably not even capable of doing that core tightening in a really stable position on the ground. So the chance of them getting here and using their entire core to send energy down to the hips through the arms is probably slim to none. So they're going to end up doing a lot of upper body pulling, or they may have low back pain simply because they're overusing their psoas, iliacus, or other hip flexion muscles. Okay, I digressed a little bit there, but I hope I give you some pointers on the technique of it. SkiErg should only be implemented, and I know this is going long, but stay with me. SkiErg should only be implemented in aerobic activities or skill building muscle contractions. So I'll say that again. SkiErg should only be implemented in aerobic activities or in skill development pieces, meaning that you're trying to develop the concentric action of this movement. Well, then I think you can put it in any skill progression. That's good. But where it does not belong in our language for OPEX is in lactic endurance pieces, any high anaerobic training, in sport specificity, let's think about it for the sport of fitness. Not often in the, let's use one kind of sport, the CrossFit Open, the chance of SkiErg being in there right now is slim. Not that it's not going to happen, but it's slim. So most times this should be practiced in aerobic environments, and in a lot of cases, map 10 down to map 3, I would say. The reason being is that the downside of it, as I said, of doing really hard, powerful contractions, is that you can't cycle it enough to create an anaerobic environment. Secondly, as in most humans, our flexion muscles or flexion pieces, right? It's all hip flexion, midsection flexion, arm flexion activities. Those are all more powerful muscles. So if you have more powerful muscles and you do really powerful activity, it's like sprinting, where those muscles will poop out very quickly. So in layman's terms, the SkiErg, because it doesn't have that released energy like I talked about outdoors, it's a recipe for disaster if you want to do really powerful activity on it. Because what you're going to end up happening is you'll just feel like after a minute you'll be going into mud. So that doesn't make it wrong. It just means that if you want to train it effectively, you want to put it into an aerobic environment or skills. Okay? So an aerobic environment, map 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, basically. Or if you're putting it on the back end of a training session just for people to work on it, or it may even be in the warm-up for them to just do some tough concentric contractions when they do that. The long head of the tricep is more of a fast twitch muscle too. It's a big involvement in this activity. So you may get some feedback from people that when they're done it, those muscles are really blown up. It's the same thing you'll feel if you did a lot of flexion activity through your midsection, right? Like if you do a whole bunch of spine flexion activity, your abs get really burnt out, which feels completely different to other slower twitch muscles like the quads or extensors of the arm or something like that. So just think about that in context. Understanding of the dose response will be the moneymaker for you, just to finish up here. Meaning that, remember, it's all concentric activity. Also remember that because you cannot disconnect energy through the body, out through the lower body, then it is a closed chain activity that's really all flexion. If you know that, you'll prescribe it really effectively, either in aerobic sessions, mixed modal aerobic work, or just cyclical all by itself. Just recognize people need to have that great core control before they do a whole bunch of reps on it, and put it into just skill formats really simply so that people can get the best out of it. That was a lot on the SkiErg. Thanks for sticking with me. If you have questions on this, just hit me up in the comment section, and then we can discuss some ways of implementing it into training. And if I missed some pieces on technique or form, or you want to add to it, don't hesitate to place it in there too.